Audio Arts Fab. This is Jeff Cash here, and today we're talking about our sharing our experience in attending the Echelon of Front Extreme Ownership Muster in Atlanta, and so this kind of wrapped up Aide De Camp for us this year. Is like last major milestone for us in the program was to attend an external offsite leadership training event, and so we chose the Extreme Ownership Muster that's put on by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, the authors of Extreme Ownership. And so we wanted to share with you guys like our big takeaways from Muster, some things that we feel like all leaders in our business could be practicing, implementing. So we're going to share some like strategies and tactics that we learned from this and kind of cover the content that we took back. So without further ado, here's our review of Extreme Ownership Muster 15.
An Aide De Camp production.
Let's get some.
Ready to get some. Like I said, Leif is always ready to get some, which is a good thing.
Stand by to get some.
Stand by to get some.
Yeah, I don't think people recognize what that actually means to us. Like we would say this all the time in combat or training scenarios when you knew that, I mean, it was about to go down. Bullets were going to be flying around, explosions were going to be going off, and you'd hear someone very clearly over the radio, just in a real calm voice, come up and be like, stand by to get some.
It's a true statement, right? You know you're going to get some.
But when you can say it in that manner, when you should be like, stand by to get some, and people are like, stand by to get some. It's pretty awesome. Let's get some.
All right, well, sticking with that theme, let's stand by to get some. So this module is actually going to break down into a couple of different parts, into different units. So in this first section of content, we're going to be covering leadership being the most important thing, some roots of learning, the foundations of leadership, laws of combat, dichotomy of leadership, mindset for victory, and know your mission. So the first slide here is leadership being the most important thing, and this should not be a surprise to anybody watching this module. But obviously with extreme ownership, it's really focused around leadership and how each individual is a leader and responsible for themselves and their actions. And so leadership is the single greatest factor in determining if a team succeeds or fails. In extreme ownership, they talk about this in the context of there's no bad teams, only bad leaders. And so leadership at every level is a big part of this slide being the most important thing. So I know you guys have some notes regarding this, so y'all take it away.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked when he was talking about leadership being the most important thing is that everyone can lead, and not just in business and in every aspect of your life. You can be, or you are a leader. Good leadership leads to victory, and bad leadership, bad things happen.
Yeah, definitely. And a big part of the conference was this saying, and leadership is the solution. So no matter the problem or the situation, like the solution is leadership. That's how you're gonna get through it. And like Kevin said, if everyone is a leader, no matter what level they are in the business, like good things are going to happen. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's like the most important aspect of this, about this slide, and the things that we took away in this part of the muster was, yeah, to you guys' point, like everybody, no matter where you are in the organization, what part of the accountability chart you fall on, like leadership, when we talk about leadership, we're talking about you, whether you have direct reports or not, like we're talking about you. Everybody's a leader. And so, I think that's an important like kind of like foundation as we go through this presentation, like to keep in mind, like in a lot of the content that we're going to cover, like you shouldn't be thinking about how this stuff should apply to your leader or your boss. How should it apply to you? Like what can you take away? What can you learn about like from this content? So it's a great starting point for us. This next slide we've got queued up is around their lessons around the roots of learning. And so when we talk about roots of learning, it's really thinking about internally, like where, like, what kind of leader do you want to be? I included in this slide, like our leadership values that we developed as Aide De Camp. Emotional intelligence, enthusiastic mindset, leads by example, influential. These were the leadership values that we identified, like going through the Ted Lasso show together. And man, it just really hit home in this part of the presentation from Jocko and Leif, like how important those values are. So.
Yeah, a big part of it is, ego, roots of learning. You're going to hear it over and over in this. Check your ego, leave your ego at the door. We're going to talk about it a lot. Ego being the enemy. Ego is a huge part of being a leader, not making decisions based off your ego. You can't go in two different directions and end up at the same place. You have to allow other people to make decisions, get everybody on the same team, delegate, allow others to have ownership of what's happening and decision making.
Yeah, and important aspects of that are listening to people, respecting them, and like understanding like the influence that your words, your actions, your reactions, what impact that has on other people. So
yeah, and a big part of what we're going to go through and what we learned at the conference was how to be a silent leader, and that should be, I think, everyone's goal. Like Kevin said, it's allowing everyone to be a leader, and if me as a leader, making sure everyone knows what they should be doing, knowing the why, and allowing it to be simple enough that they can accomplish it, like that should be the goal for everyone.
Yeah, and to your point, Nick, like creating clarity and alignment through your communication, like that should be the focus, that should be the goal. And this part of the conference, like Jocko was talking about, like his early experience and like in a training exercise where he really like learned to, like within himself, like discovered the power of detachment and stuff like that. And he talked about everybody being focused, looking down the barrel of their rifle and not like stepping back and taking a look at the situation and making a call. So like again, these things are going to be kind of hammered home throughout the rest of these slides, but the power of detachment, being able to take a step back, take a breath, look around, make a call. So
when you think of one more thing on that, when you think of being part of a team and everybody in the team being leaders, the way we talked about, the way you talk to people, staying calm, listen, respect, influence, words we use matter. Words we use help us be a part of a team or stand apart from a team. When you're talking about your teammates and you say things like, this is whoever and he works for me, or this is whoever and we work together. Those types of words, the way you frame it out, helps build that team relationship versus a structure of the team's here and I'm over there.
Right.
And what we talked about there and we're going to talk about here, like it all goes back to the 4 leadership values that we discussed earlier. And we may use different words, but it all means the same thing. Like detachment is basically emotional intelligence, right? Like it's taking back, getting the ego out, and being smart enough to figure out the solution without needing to involve your emotions. So
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so and to get into that, like the next slide is really laying out the laws of combat. And so if you've read Extreme Ownership, this should be really familiar to you. These are the concepts, the principles that they share in the book. But the kind of the key takeaway here is like these are actions and behaviors that are employed by the best leaders and teams. So those principles are cover and move, simple, prioritize and execute, and decentralized command.
And I think as a leader, like I was saying, being a silent leader, if you can do these 4 things, you will become a silent leader. And I think we break down all of these, but cover and move is all about trust. And like, I think that's the building block of any team. Keeping everything simple should always be the goal. Like keep it simple, stupid should be something that everyone says every day to themselves. What's the next one? Prioritize and execute. Leaders must be elevated to do this. If you are buried in day-to-day tasks, then you can't be an effective leader, right? So prioritizing the right things and executing on those, and then delegating the rest. And then decentralized command is all about making sure that your team can do it without you being a part of it. So if the other three items are being accomplished, they should also be able to do this on their own.
Yeah, and when you're talking about, your team and these laws of combat, it's important to remember that your team, your entire team, is not just the group of people you work with, but other departments, the people that are your customers, the people that you're a customer of. It's important to remember that these people in other departments that we work with every day are not our enemy. And that is all built off of trust, the trust that we build through relationships with each other. The whole intent of the laws of combat are to take better care of your people, right? And to build those relationships based off trust so that the common goal and mission is achieved.
Definitely. And since we got back, the two things that have stuck in my head the most, in my thought process, has been the simple and decentralized command. Everything that I've done since, I've been thinking, is this as simple as it can be? And will my team be able to execute on this without any supervision because it is so simple? So personally, those are the two that I've thought about the most since we gotten back from the muster.
Yeah, and I don't know, the thing that stood out to me the most, and we're gonna, throughout the presentation, we're gonna relate this to other books that we've read, whether it's the Lencioni books, Ideal Team Player, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Fred Factor. There's elements of that in here. There's also elements of EOS in here, which, so when you look across many different landscapes in terms of content that you can go and learn and adapt to, when you see commonalities, to me, that equals truth. It's man, if everybody's saying the same kind of things, that means it must be true, it must be effective. And so when I think about these 4 principles, I related a lot of this stuff back to EOS and how we use the delegate and elevate exercise. It equips managers with a tool to be able to look at the things that they're doing day in, day out, and be able to identify tasks that maybe aren't key or necessary for them, but that can be, delegated to members of their team. And when we talk about alignment and creating clarity across the org, the VTO, our vision traction organizer, that's a tool that stood out to me. The 5 leadership abilities, are a great tie-in to these laws of combat. I've got them posted on my bulletin board in the office, but it's simplify, it's delegate and elevate, it's predict, systemize, and structure. So a lot of these, there's so much commonality between what we heard at muster, what we've read in Extreme Ownership, and all the other books that we've read. I think that's pretty neat, and it also, it's comforting to me because I know the consistencies that you find, the similarities that you find in these things, they mean they work. People are saying the same thing, it's because they work. So
yeah, I was just talking to someone and they jokingly said I've read 30 or 40 leadership books and I've really only learned 6 things, and that's exactly what you said. There's a reason that that's the case.
Right, and stuff Nick talked about decentralized command and simple being his big takeaways from the beginning of that muster. When we're talking about something that Jocko mentioned, when you're checking to see if your plan is understood, if it's simple enough, the best way to do that is ask your team, did you understand it? Do you have any questions? And it works up the chain of command too. Right. Giving feedback, asking clarifying questions. If they can't tell you the plan back, it's not simple enough.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. Yeah. So the next slide is it's a really important concept, and I didn't really know this word or understand it until I actually read their book on the dichotomies of leadership. But when you hear the word dichotomy, all you should hear is you should think of the word balance. It's the middle point between opposing forces. That's what you should be thinking about. So in the presentation or at the muster, Jocko talked about how the problem with extreme ownership is that the only thing you should be extreme about is owning everything in your world, but everything else is about balance. And so I think it's important for people to understand that, because there can be some misunderstanding or misperception about like what extreme ownership means. It's all about you and owning everything that you're a part of and that you contribute to. But everything else in terms of like how you interact externally with the rest of the world, with your, whether it's people that you work with or people in your personal life, like it's about balance and finding that balance. So I think we've got some good notes here about where, like just some good examples of where the balance is. What are the two opposing forces?
Yeah, and I think for each one of these we have listed, like an important first step in balancing these is knowing where your natural tendencies lie. Are you naturally resolute, or are you overbearing? Are you disciplined or rigid, not rigid? Knowing your natural tendencies, and we talk about that in a few different slides, but that's it's really important. Like resolute, not every battle is worth fighting. Knowing when your emotions or natural tendencies are in opposition of what you're trying to achieve, and that happens. It happens a lot, I think, to a lot of people. In discipline, making sure whatever is important is clear, and being willing to listen to your team. Leaders, the best leaders are followers. He talks a lot about being default aggressive, right? And in the muster, there's all these SEALs up there, and they're like, stand by to get some. All this testosterone's going, and it's be default aggressive. But you could take that too far and be reckless and take chances that don't need to be taken. Being aggressive for what's the best tactic to achieve your goal, what's best for the team. And then we've talked a lot through Aide De Camp about humility, right? And I know when we did the ideal team player, we talked a lot about humility not being passiveness. Humility is not thinking or not knowing your worth, right? You can know your worth and know your opinions are important and that they matter. You just need to make sure you understand that balance, and that you're willing to push back on your chain of command if it's not what's best for the team or best for the mission. But the only way that works, the only way you can do that, is having built a relationship of trust with your chain of command. If you don't have that, if you're always pushing back, you're not going to be able to be heard or listened to.
Yeah, agreed. And so like the big takeaway here for me was, and just like kind of summarizing what we've talked about, is like leadership seldom requires extreme ideas or attitudes. Like it's always somewhere in the middle. And I think that's, again, it's not just about leadership. It's like every aspect of your life, you should be looking for that balance, and not being too extreme one way or the other. So the next slide that we have here is actually a video about mindset for victory. So here we go.
People look for the shortcut, the hack. The shortcut is a lie. The hack doesn't get you there. There is no easy way. There is only discipline. You can't control other people. The only person you can control is you. You have control over your mind. Weakness. I'm nothing but weakness. I get emotional over stupid things. I eat the wrong foods. I don't sleep enough. I procrastinate. I waste time. I care too much about stupid things and not enough about important things. In all those ways, I am weak. But I don't accept that. So often, the easy path calls us to be weak for that moment, to give in to short-term gratification. Discipline will not allow that. Discipline can seem like your worst enemy, but in reality, it is your best friend. Discipline. It will make you better and stronger and smarter and faster and healthier than anything else. And most important, it will make you free. Discipline equals freedom.
Yeah, so you heard it there in that video clip, like the mindset for victory. Like it's one of Jocko's like most popular phrases is discipline equals freedom, and that applies in every aspect of your life, whether it's work or finances or family time or whatever it is. Like the more disciplined you can be, the more freedom it creates for you to do the things that you want to do. So
Yeah, we just had training for time management, and she said if you like are more disciplined with your time, the more time you're going to have, which is basically saying the same thing. And since the muster, like coming from the muster, one of my favorite words or phrases is standard operating procedures, and how I think we need more of those so that we will be more disciplined, and that will allow us to better do our jobs and be freer to do them. Uh, Jeff, you told me a couple months ago, like if we can do stuff 90% of the time the same way, it'll allow us to do the other 10% the way it needs to be done outside the process. And that's, I feel like the exact, like how we should be working towards things.
yeah, I think it's like the spirit of what I told you too is like the processes, like systems and processes aren't there to like control every movement, every action that you make. It's there to support what most consistently happens. To like be there to support that, to create reflexes in your activity, like so that you're delivering like consistent results, so that then that whatever's left over, you can put your own flavor, your own spin, your own taste on, like because everybody has a different style of work and how they get things done. And so that's where that, like, yeah, the discipline around following the processes, using the system, creates the freedom to take what's left over and put your own spin on it, So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we talked about natural tendencies, and when problems are arising, or even when we're looking at a goal or daily activities or whatever it is, there's a lot of natural tendency towards inaction, resisting change, being reactive to issues. You can't ignore a problem. You have to create a bias towards action, like proactive action. If you resist change and lack humility, you get complacent. Humility allows us to be open to how we can improve. I think Jocko says adapt or die, right? And he talks a little bit during Mindset for Victory how easy it is to place blame instead of taking ownership, right? And it's contagious. If you place blame on the guy down the chain from you, or someone that it's easy to place blame on, they're immediately going to get defensive and place blame on someone else, and it just goes down the chain.
For sure.
And it solves nothing.
Yep. Yeah, and circling back around to default aggressive, like this is not like default aggressive in like attitude or towards people. Like it's not being aggressive towards people. It's being default aggressive towards action, towards progress. So he mentions in there, like you mentioned, the bias, like having a bias for action. He also mentioned like action beats inaction. So in most cases, like we don't need to have 100% solution in order to move forward. And it's like a lot of the things that like these principles kind of break down is like the incremental progress momentum that you get going, like gives you the ability to like adjust and pivot towards the right solution. So it's a work in progress more than it is like I've got a perfect plan, I've thought through everything. Like in most cases, we don't have time to do that. And by the time if you take the time to do that, by the time it's time to execute, like everything's already changed, So I think that's the spirit behind like being default aggressive is moving forward incrementally, making progress. In an environment that's constantly changing. So that speaks to the innovate and adapt aspect of it. The other thing with like humility, sorry, Nick. The other thing with humility is like he talked about it being a disease of victory, like there's opportunities in our business, in any department, any function within our business, to like when you have success, like you get kind of lax, you get kind of lazy, like you get over confident, and that's how he kind of described like the disease of victory. So it's like staying humble allows you to like continue to be like in a student mindset. We've talked about that a lot through Aide De Camp, is like being humble students, eager to learn, eager to teach the lessons and principles that we're learning. So like that I think humility is obviously a huge aspect of that. So
Yeah, I was just going to mention that you're never going to make all the right decisions. So by staying that default aggressive mindset, it allow you to quickly pivot and go to a different decision after you've determined that's the wrong one. So
yeah, also like so in this part of the presentation, he talked about, and I think this was just like off the cuff. He talked about the explanation effort meter, and it's like so like in terms of like simplifying something, which was on the previous slide, like you like if you find yourself like using so many words or taking so much time to explain something, it probably doesn't make sense, or it's a bad idea, or it's possible in a lot of cases like that just like egos involved, like you're so dead set on like doing something a certain way regardless of whether it makes sense to other people or not. So he introduced the idea or the concept of an explanation effort meter. It's like to monitor yourself like in clarifying the things that you're saying or communicating directions, or whether it's like commander's intent or process or whatever. Like if you're using too many words to describe that, like I'm doing right now, you're probably doesn't make sense. No, I just thought that was an interesting concept. It's like I try to be mindful of like economy of words and like how much I'm saying versus how much I'm listening to, so.
Yeah, I really like the explanation effort meter, and he talked about if you don't keep it simple or you don't ask clarifying questions or get the feedback, things that feel obvious to you, there's a very good chance they're not obvious to other people. And you get in the simple scenario of like, why did you turn right there when you should have turned left? It's obvious you should have turned left, but like maybe it's obvious to you, but you didn't explain it well enough that it's obvious to someone else.
Right. Awesome. So to wrap this first part up, the last slide here is know your mission. And so there's a couple of different elements here, but like the theme of like knowing your mission is really around understanding the why, or like defining what winning looks like, and so that was really my big takeaway, and also understanding like what can you control. And that, it's funny, like I not only have these conversations at work, but also these are like conversations that kind of like guide my interactions with my kids. Like the conversations I have with my kids are talking about what can you control in your environment. Like you control your attitude, you control your work ethic, you control your discipline and your integrity. Like, and if you and how powerful is it for an individual to know that they're in control of those things? Like it's not other people pulling the strings on it. It's like your attitude, work ethic, integrity, and discipline are all 100% in your control. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, talking about having a fulfilling mission or a mission that you believe in, and that's a big part of it, right? Not lying to yourself, being honest with yourself, not justifying why you would make a decision, why you do or don't do something. If you believe in the goal and you're honest with yourself about the goal, the goal may not be easy. You just have to keep reminding yourself the why. Like, why are we trying to accomplish this? Why is this our purpose? And be open and honest with yourself in the decisions you make. Don't justify a decision that your gut tells you is wrong, or your team or someone on your team tells you is wrong. Being open to that feedback.
Yeah, I think that managers in general, I know I can do a better job of making sure that I know my mission and my team knows their mission, so that everyone aligned goals, and we all can see the VTO and know what the mission is for ArcFab in general. So like making sure that our individual missions are also aligned there, so that everyone's swimming the same direction, I think is critical. And just going back to the previous slide too, but like just having that right mindset that you're working towards accomplishing something and it is your mission, it really starts with that mindset. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like the VTO, like that's right now, to my knowledge, like the executive team is the one that's like, is like we have the executive level, like vision traction organizer. And we're laying out like org wide, company wide, like what direction, what does winning look like in 1 year, in 3 years, and 10 years? Like, what does it look like? And I think there's a huge opportunity for that to kind of break down under each level of our business, to be able to identify what is it like keeping those things in alignment, but what does it look like specifically for our team to win? Like if we win, like what does winning look like for us towards those higher level goals for the company? So, and the final quote that I wanted to leave here is I think Leif said this, like when you care more about the team winning than winning yourself, that's when you start to become a leader. And so it's really focused around not defining what winning looks like for you as an individual leader, but like what does it look like for your team, and putting that first and foremost like above yourself. So hey, so that wraps up the first part of our presentation. Part 2 is going to look like this, and you'll be clicking to the next unit for it. So thanks for tuning in for this part, and we hope you stay tuned for the rest. Stand by to get some.